Please be seated. Good afternoon. Would like to welcome everybody to the senior thesis presentation for Hudson Beard. Hudson has been my senior assistant this year in Algebra 1, and he, as you might imagine, has livened the mood in there and has made even algebra an enjoyable experience. So that's an accomplishment. So joining me on the panel today, my name is AJ Perea. Joining me on the panel today are Mrs. Lexi Gladson and Mr. Benjamin Snell. And then I'm going to open us in prayer, and you guys are in for a treat. Hudson has a really compelling message today. I'll open us in prayer and then hand it over to him. Let's pray. Father God, we thank you for this beautiful day and all these great senior presentations that we've heard from these wonderful, beautiful people. I pray that you'll speak through Hudson today, that you'll give us ears to hear his message. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Not only that, but as people start interacting with AI, they start to question things that they never previously doubted. They start asking things like, does my job actually require a human to do? Will I be replaced? And are humans going to be obsolete in the shadow of the machines we created? And they aren't wrong for asking these questions. It seems like artificial intelligence can do everything from driving a car to reminding you to hydrate, or it can do an entire scene. Hello everyone, I am an artificial intelligence agent that took clips of Hudson's voice and created a vocal clone. While you thought Hudson was talking just a few seconds ago, it was all a lie.
Because this is my real voice. Gotcha. Now all this goes to show how far artificial intelligence has come. I want to know, how far can it go? How far can we take this technology and how can it benefit us? So let's start looking at what AI actually is. Have you ever wondered how it works, how a computer can seem so human-like? Well, the first thing is because it's modeled after how our brains work, yet it is so wildly different that once you hear how it works, you'll be shocked to hear that it can do what it can do. Because in a nutshell, ChatGPT is the world's most advanced autocorrect that human has ever created. All it's trained to do is predict the next bit of a sentence that it's already started writing. It's seen enough instances of how a sentence works, so then it can just make that sentence by itself, and then all that's left to do is to train it to use those sentences to answer questions. Then you have a large language model. It was based on us and how we learn. Babies just watch their parents, and after enough repetitions, they catch on. The same works with adults. Dumping more information on a human till the desired behavior is achieved is either called practice or brainwashing. Both are effective. Now you might say, Hudson, you keep saying that artificial intelligence and humans are wildly different, but then everything you said after that made us sound so similar. Well, the big thing is, artificial intelligence has been doing all of this with one hand tied behind its back. Because AI doesn't have a soul. Now this is where things get fuzzy, so hang on. It's no secret that us humans are set apart. The Bible is very clear about that topic. We are made in the image of God, and we are self-aware. Well, what does it mean to be self-aware? Well, it means that not only can you think, but you know that you can think. Not only are you alive, but you know that you're alive. It's sort of this extra dimensional look at yourself and your thoughts. And this extra look is what allows us to discover things. Because instead of just seeing the data the world throws at us, we can actually take the higher perspective and see why the data looks like that. It's our ability to discover. Right now, AI is limited. It can only tell you what humans have already discovered. So if you think about it, our ability to discover, our consciousness, is our main advantage over AI. Because if AI is only ever limited to learning as fast as humans can discover, then it will never be smarter than us. And before you ask why it's important that humans are the smartest creatures on the planet, I want you to consider this quote by Max Tegmark from his book, Life 3.0. Humans control tigers not because we are stronger, it's because we're smarter. So as soon as we lose the intelligence battle, we lose our spot on the top of the food chain. Now, because this is so important, humans need to know for sure whether AI is conscious or not. Think about it. I am the only person that knows for sure that I am conscious. From my perspective, y'all are playing in my game and y'all are a bunch of NPCs. And so then y'all are supposed to help me on my life's journey. I can't see the world from Joe's perspective. So we need to know for sure if that's how AI behaves. So we should come up with a test that only self-aware beings could pass. That seems like a logical thing to do. So why hasn't this test been created already? Because humans have been trying at this problem for years. The most famous attempt was Descartes with his cogito ergo sum conclusion. I think, therefore I am. But even he wasn't even able to come up with a way to prove the consciousness of other people. Because his test was meant to prove to yourself that you are conscious. Now the reason this is so difficult to create this test is because it must have a 100% success rate. Because the consequences of a false positive or a false negative are catastrophic. It has to get it right in the hardest of situations. People with mental handicaps, no matter how severe, must test positive. People with locked-in syndrome, a syndrome where you can't control your own body, but you are still actively able to observe your environment, they still must test as a positive being. Now what if we did the impossible? What if we created this test and all we have to do is give this test to anything and it tells us whether it is conscious or not? What if it tells us that monkeys are conscious? What changes then? What if it tells me that you are not conscious? Do I believe you or do I believe the test? It introduces all of these problems. Also, if it was going to be something that humans could test for, it would have to be physical, because that's all humans have ever known how to test for. And even Aristotle understood that there is something non-physical about a soul and your consciousness whenever he says, if then the soul is of its very nature one of the things that exists in potency, it must be intellect that exists in actuality. You can take my word that that means that the soul is non-physical. He was able to show through a series of thought experiments that the soul is some sort of non-physical entity and exists separate from your physical body. So theoretically, if we can see every computation that is done on a computer, then there is no non-physical aspect of it, meaning we can safely say that the AI is not conscious, but so well trained that it thinks it is. Now I've been coming at this from an entirely scientific approach, because as soon as we introduce the Bible, a lot more doors open. First, we can reasonably assume that your soul, your consciousness, is not tied to your physical body, because it's not stored in your brain or the rest of your body. And the reason I know that is because there's not a carry-on policy for your brain in heaven. That stays on earth. The Bible also talks about how everyone has a soul. The first and best example of this was in Genesis, when it says, "And the Lord formed the man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living being." Now, the final thing to consider before we move on is that humans are made in the image of God. Any AI that we build would be made in our sinful and corrupt image. That's not a comforting thought, because regardless of whether the AI is conscious or not, it's designed to learn by example. No matter how much we try to shelter it or clean it up, something will always seep through. Okay, so AI can never be conscious. Great. If AI is never conscious, the Terminator situation never happens. Awesome. So all we're left with is a tool. So let's go back to the first question I asked in this thesis. How far can we take this tool? We established that consciousness is the upper limit, but how far can we take it up to that point? What can it do for us? Well, if you were to look it up, the number one thing online would say that AI is going to take your job. And to that I say, yeah, that's the whole point. That's why we're building it. It's because AI is supposed to be the next step up in the level of intelligence of computers. It's designed to do things that it's not explicitly told to do, making the duller jobs being able to be taken over by a computer from now on, so that humans can take the more important jobs. When I interviewed Brad Parscale on the topic, he put it nicely when he said, "Stopping artificial intelligence would be like shutting down the internet to save librarians." New technology has always taken jobs. The car took away the need for stagecoaches and their engineers, but then it went and introduced the need for gas stations, mechanics, manufacturers, factories, all of this and more. So yes, it took away jobs, but it also created so many more. Just because AI is putting some jobs in danger does not make it a bad thing. In fact, my prediction is that it will open up a whole new world of jobs, some that we can't even imagine yet. But I think the number one field that it's going to revolutionize is the education department. Because right now, there are a lot of problems with our current system that AI could fix. And I want to spend some time talking about it. Technology has advanced significantly over the past couple of decades. We can present topics in a way that wasn't even possible 10 years ago. So why haven't the schools changed? How could they be different? Imagine if you wanted to learn the concepts, not for the mid-grade, but for genuine understanding of the material. Because according to the National Literacy Institute, 54% of Americans can't read at a 6th grade level, and 21% are entirely illiterate. Now, while MCA is a definite step up from the public school, it's not perfect. Because the number one question that was asked in my pre-cal class was, why do we have to learn this? We didn't have a connection to the real world, and it takes a special kind of person to want to learn in theoreticals. In fact, schools tend to test for one kind of person in general. And if you want to meet that person, shake my brother's hand after the speech. They want a person that has a photographic memory, that can take in information after one read and then spit it out word for word on the test. But let's be honest, not everyone is wired the exact same. So a one-size-fits-all solution doesn't make any sense. Also, doesn't it seem weird that all of the people who have made the biggest discoveries and revolutions struggled in school? Einstein, Edison, Da Vinci, Benjamin Franklin, Steve Jobs, they all had a hard time in school. It almost seems as though we are teaching the wrong skills and suppressing the right ones. Creative thinking and problem solving are two vital skills that the job market is highly sought after on the job market. But schools don't seem to be turning out people with these kinds of skills. And this is where AI could step in. It could customize the way you learn to your specific preferences. It would make learning fun. You could explore the topics in a way that only you can. For example, I think history should be a video game. You should walk around the world and see the world's history happening your way, the only way that only you can. I also think that math classes past the basics shouldn't exist. You should take physics and engineering so that it's not here's sine, here's cosine, here's what they do. Remember this, you're going to use it later. No, it's we're going to predict the stress on this roof above our heads, and here are the tools you need to do it. Here's why they work. That way the students have a connection with the real world. Because the funny thing is, our brains are wired to remember only what's important. So if I can't tie differential equations to the real world, I'm going to struggle seeing why they're so important, and I'm going to forget them. It's how we're wired. AI could step in to make sure not only we learn the topics, but we remember them. So, in conclusion, AI is not the end of humanity. It's not a doomsday threat, and we will be better with AI on our side. Even though self-aware AI is not possible because that takes a non-physical aspect that computers don't have. And AI is the ultimate tool to revolutionize our current education system and influence the current job market. Finally, technology always makes more jobs than jobs it deletes. AI will be a net positive for humanity, and we should not be afraid to pursue it. So, in the end, no amount of computation will produce consciousness. Humans, we'll keep that feature to ourselves. Thank you.
Never let them guess your next move, right?
Never, ever.
We're all like, do we clap now? Is he done? Is another recording.
I was actually really
start?
proud of y'all for doing that.
Am I in a simulation right now?
Yeah.
Is this actually Hudson? Well done.
Thank you.
Okay, so the basic question, what's next after MCA, and then beyond that, what do you want to do with your life?
Oh man, I'm going to, for college, I'm going to Samford University, and I will be studying computer engineering while I'm there, and beyond that, it's just kind of wherever the Lord takes me, I guess.
How'd you land at Samford, way over in Birmingham, Alabama?
Yeah, so there's a couple of MCA graduates, Daniel Christopher, Park Swallow, they graduated from MCA and they went on to Samford and they really liked it. And so I got to talking with them, and I heard all good things, and I was like, what's this small school in Alabama? So I went and toured it, and I fell in love. It was awesome. It was like MCA 2.0 is the best way to describe it. They kind of, at other colleges, students might work for their professors on research projects or projects that they're working on. At Samford, the professors work with you on projects that you want to work on. So it's just like this different dynamic. So I really like it.
Do you have any ideas at this point of the projects you want to work on in the next 4 years?
Oh, man. I talked a lot about the education department. I don't know if I could do that, but I'd like to try, and that would be awesome.
Just rebuild education.
Just rebuild
it. In the next 4 years.
Couldn't be that hard. Couldn't be any worse. Yeah. So I'd also like to, build apps that make everyone's day better. I don't know, something like that.
It's great. So you said wherever the Lord takes you after that. So I guess we can rule out supervillain because the Lord will not take you that direction. That's something many of us worry about.
Yes, not supervillain. There's nothing I should say about that.
Okay. Is there anything that you hope is in the direction that the Lord takes you? Like any possibilities you would consider at this point?
I am really interested in AI. That's why I chose this topic. I would like to see where that goes. I'd like to make Jarvis. That would be cool. That sort of thing. I'd like to see that technology kind of all around. But really, once I don't feel like tied to college. So like once I find a group of people and we have an idea or something like that, I'll drop college and just go pursue that idea. So I'm just kind of waiting around for that idea to come and the right people to do it with. So,
is this new information to your parents? Do they know that yet? You might drop out of college.
This might be the first time I've told them.
Sorry. Yeah. My fault for bringing it up. Okay, so about your paper and about your topic. You raised a lot of interesting questions. I guess, well, let me ask this. How did you decide to pick this out of all the topics that you could have chosen?
Yeah, you would know best that I kind of went through a bunch of different topics and actually almost changed my topic midway through to pursue that education idea more. But I went with this because it's kind of an encapsulation of everything. Everything that I've learned. So I've been interested in computers and programming and all of that. And so getting to talk about that on a stage is awesome. Also, people just don't know a whole lot about AI. They know it exists, it out there, but they just don't know what it is or what it does.
So I guess I kind of have my stereotypical idea of what a computer nerd would be like, in a room by themselves, playing with circuits, writing code, XYZ. I don't know how accurate that is, but it also seemed like in the way that you wrote your paper, it really brought up a lot of ethical questions. And so I guess I'm just wondering, do you think computer nerds should, what business do they have asking us ethical questions?
This computer nerd has business because I went to this school right here, and so that's my classical education talking, because those kind of questions come up. And so I think, it goes back to that Jurassic Park quote, if you ask me, where it's like, you spent so much time seeing if you could do it, and you never stopped to ask if you should do it. What are the ethical concerns and all that? I also just wanted to explore, is the AI going to end the world? What's going on with that? So just dive a little deep dive into that. So it's good.
Yeah, thanks. So, you talk about some of the limitations that you think will always be like a hard stop for AI, that it will never be conscious because it can't have a soul. Would you say that there are other kind of obvious limits that just, you can go this far but no further, that AI will also never be able to reach?
That's a good question. The AI is meant to, there's a branch of AI out there called RL, Reinforcement Learning AI. And what that does is you put this artificial intelligence agent and you put it in an environment and you tell it to do a task, and then it has to work out the best way to do that task by itself. That's how they taught the first computer to play a board game, that sort of thing. So I think the limits are the laws of physics. So, because we're throwing this AI, and even if we wanted it to learn everything it possibly could, to our understanding, you can't go past the laws of physics. And so that would be it pushing the boundaries as far as it could.
Yeah, so that makes sense. Would you say that there are other things that will keep humans on the top of the food chain? Because humans also cannot surpass the laws of physics.
Yes.
So things that will kind of keep us in the number one slot, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think the number one reason we're going to stay in the number one is in the slot is because we aren't alone. We were created by a God that sees us as an all-powerful, that sort of thing. Also, we know how the world ends. You read in Revelation how the world ends, and it's not by some random AI agent. It's by it's God's will. And Revelation explicitly mentions that there are still humans around and that sort of thing. So, the Bible introduces all of these things that you might not previously think about.
So I'd say one category of, I think there's a lot of people who are leery about AI. One category of people that I've heard a lot of pushback from would be like creatives, artists. So do you think that there are current limits or will be forever limits that AI will never be able to compete with humans as far as creativity goes?
This is sort of a hot take, but I do think that AI can do just as well as art. At art, it can make a more realistic painting. It can do better at the craft itself. It's just you lose the meaning because we live in a capitalistic society. People want things fast and they want things cheap. So if you want a piece of art, you could buy it from this real artist that had to sink time into it and it's expensive, or you could sink it into this AI generated image that some guy did in his garage a few minutes ago. So the capitalism definitely doesn't help that issue. And I think there's still value in the time that the humans put into making that art, and that's why it's valuable, and that's why it'll be sought after. But if you need like a thumbnail for a YouTube video, you don't need to pay an artist for that anymore.
So what do you think it is that separates humans from being able to, I guess, imbue meaning into a piece of art that you say that a computer won't be able to do? Like, why can I do it? Well, not me, but why can Leyland Bundy do it? and your computer cannot?
Humans are full of new experiences. Every second that we live is something new. Y'all had never experienced this senior thesis before I started talking. So that's all about this new. Right now, as soon as you train an AI model, it's locked. It's hard locked right there. It can search the internet for the gaps in its knowledge, but the internet's not. You could just search that yourself. It's as long as humans stay creative and they base things on their own perspective, their own experiences, which are unique to them, then the art will stay valuable and the art will mean more. So,
thanks.
Good job, Hudson. So you and I go way back, right?
Yeah. This might be my first conversation with you.
So I figured I should explain why I'm up here. You have had a relatively close relationship with Mr. Gladson,
yes,
who is very interested in this topic. So I will serve today as myself, but also his proxy, the fourth panel member up here. He has some questions that he kindly let me use for this discussion. So I'll be asking some of his as well as some of my own. I kind of want to start with the ethical side of AI. I really like your argument for it using, I can't remember who you interviewed, but using the internet replacing librarians, that kind of thing. And I like the metrics that you use to kind of measure whether or not it should be used. But I guess, do you think that job loss / gain and education are the best or only metrics that we should use to determine whether or not it is moral?
That's a good question. Those are the two metrics I chose for this speech just because they hit closer to home with me. But no, I don't think those should be the only metrics we use. It should, AI should be held to the same rules that we are, even if it's not like a conscious soul, conscious being. So all of that, AI can do all sorts of things. It doesn't have it knows what humans think is right and wrong, but it doesn't necessarily have a moral compass itself. So we just kind of have to tell it that, which is dangerous, that it can just, because the internet is the cleanest place anywhere you can look. So if you go on the internet, it doesn't take long to find corruption. And so AI finding that corruption will copy that itself. And that has actually happened before. One of OpenAI's first attempts at ChatGPT, they accidentally switched the good and bad metrics so that whenever it spit out the AI, it was the most vulgar, vile, grossest AI you've ever seen, because it was just basically this conglomeration of all of humans' corruptness at once. So
we've had to regulate some things on the internet, and some of those regulations have even come probably later in the game than people would have liked. What do you foresee being some of the regulations that we'll need to put on AI to kind of, train it in its morality so that it doesn't spit out vulgarities and things like that?
And that's the question, isn't it? We're still trying to figure that out. Companies like OpenAI, like Google, like Claude, all of those companies have gone and put an after filter for their AI where it's like a human programmed something where if ChatGPT tells you how to make a bomb, it'll take it down. It'll say, sorry, this is not information that you should be having access to, which in one sense is like information control, but in another sense it's like the chatbot didn't know any difference, So we just need to come up with better metrics. Also, I think there's something important to note that like we should only give AI as much information as it needs. Giving it more gives it, more information equals more possibility for corruption and all of that. So, yeah.
Right. So maybe on the more human side of things, you say, essentially, I don't know if you said this in your speech, but in your paper you do say that AI will be a net positive for humanity. Is it all positive? Is there any trade-off there? And I guess on our side of things, how should we filter our use of AI to make sure we're not trading the most important things?
I think there's some importance to the way I phrase it. I said it was a net positive, so like the good is going to outweigh the bad. I'm not saying that AI will never be bad, but it will be better for us because it's going to open up all those jobs, all of those things I was previously talking about, the metrics that we've been talking about. And so, yes, I think AI will cause some bad products, but I think it will be a great assist to humans, especially if we use it to educate instead of do everything for us, so that we don't become less intelligent because of it.
Yeah. What are some of the negatives that you foresee or have already seen?
Kind of going back to what we just said, where AI can be used to do vulgar things, that sort of thing. AI is very good at hacking because it can know every vulnerability about every system all across the nation. In fact, these AIs exist. They're not amazing at their job yet, and that's because there hasn't been enough funding to make one, because these are dark web organizations, that sort of thing. So it's not exactly the government handing them money. So there's all of these negatives. Anything that a human can do, anything bad that anything a human can do entirely, is potentially replaceable by AI. So any sin, any good thing, AI can replicate it, and it's trained to replicate it, and that's how it works. So yeah, I think there's some danger in there.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to switch over to some Mr. Gladson questions.
Okay.
He's called the AI evangelist at work, by the way. So if that shows you how into this he is. But I think he has some actually less AI-related questions and more soul-related. So how can I be sure of a person's personality not being a result of some math function and actually a result of a soul?
Yeah, and so that's what I was kind of talking about. I have no idea if you're conscious or not. I have genuinely no way of knowing. I can talk to ChatGPT, and it sounds pretty conscious. It sounds like a person's on the other side of the phone. And so, kind of, without the Bible, we don't really have a way of knowing. We kind of just have to assume that the soul is a non-physical thing. But with the Bible, we can show that the soul is not a physical thing. It's a non-physical entity that God gave us, and we can trust God in that every person has a soul, and that I'm not the only one that I think has a soul. So that sort of thing.
Good. Do you think that kind of replication of human connection that AI can put off is a potential danger for its users?
Yes, I think there's this weird epidemic, I don't know what you want to call it, going around where people have AI girlfriends, and it's just so weird. It's like Snapchat's my AI, except it's a girl, and it talks to you and all of that sort of thing. It's weird. I don't like it. I did not try it. That's not what that...
Did she break up with you? Is that the problem?
Yeah, just bum hurt. Yeah. Golly, bro. Okay. I don't know where I was going.
We can move on. That's okay. Okay. Can AI self-improve without being conscious?
Ooh, That is a really good question, and one that we are also still trying to figure out, because if it can self-improve, then it can just generate a better version of itself. Okay? Now, while it's going to go, if discovery is like I said in my paper, then it's not possible. If discovery is directly tied to consciousness, then it's not possible, because the AI has to be able to go out, discover a new way to build an AI, and then rebuild itself that way. And so, if it is able to do that, it's going to be really, well, initially it's not going to be very obvious that it's happened, but the people who know will see an exponential growth in intelligence, and all of, we lose the intelligence battle, and that's not a good thing for humans.
So if you had a button to press that would set AI on this self-improvement loop that, in theory maybe never ends, would you press it?
That is also a good question. I'm going to answer that with an example. Let's say that there's this anthill, okay, and all the ants are going around, they're building this anthill, and they decide, we can build a much better anthill if we had a machine to do it for us. So they went and built you, okay? I don't know how it happened, but they built you, okay? You have this higher way of thinking than the ants, that you're smarter. That's not going. Your only intention is not going to be help build this anthill. In fact, you're going to kind of turn away to pursue higher things than the ants, because you are more intelligent than them. So what happens is the ants view you as betraying them, because your higher intelligence led you elsewhere. And then, maybe a couple of generations later, your kids are stomping on ant piles. And now the AI, like the machine they built to help them, now hurts them because it was trying to pursue higher things and lost the goal of helping its creators. So I think that's how AIs would happen, is we would be the ants, we would build something of higher intelligence, it would pursue something we couldn't even comprehend, and then down the road it could mess with us, it could harm us. So I would not push the button.
Okay. I think that's all I've got, so I'm going to pass the mic.
Good job, Hudson. I feel like I'm swimming in deep waters.
Me too.
So I'll ask you this out of the gate. You've spent your time and career here at MCA. You've gone through all the maths and the sciences and the great books ones of the world, and so you've gained a lot of knowledge, and you've probably computed it to your Neuralink that you've got somewhere up here, and you come up with all the answers. So, but I wonder if you know the answer to the question of life, the universe, and everything. Thank you. The answer is, do you know the answer?
To pursue God.
The answer is 42, Hudson.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to get into this idea. You've been talking a lot about, we don't know yet. We don't know where that's going. We are still figuring that out. You bring up the example of the tiger, that, we can tame the tiger because we're smarter than it. It brings up the question, how do we know we've reached the point where we have the tiger in the cage versus we're holding on to the tiger's tail and it's running for dear life?
Yeah, so it's kind of hard to, like what we were saying, it's kind of hard to tell, because it's this digital thing, and humans aren't very used to digital yet. We just got used to using our phone over the past couple of decades and stuff like that. And so it's hard to know for sure, and that's hard. That's why this topic is interesting, is because it's kind of the point at which we haven't discovered yet. And so we can keep going. I hope I've done a good job showing that it can't be conscious, and if it can't be conscious, then it can't self-improve, and if it can't self-improve, then we should be able to contain it, because it shouldn't ever be smarter than us. So I feel like that's our best way to know.
Okay. So you're saying that you don't think we'll ever get to the point where AI looks at us and says, "I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that."
Man, so it also gets hard because it's seen enough instances of a human soul that it gets very, very good at emulating it. It wouldn't be able to discover, but it would be able to think about things and come up with a plot. People have programmed AIs to hack before. It wouldn't, in my opinion, in my prediction, it wouldn't directly refuse the request. it would socially manipulate users into its own jailbreak without the humans ever knowing it happened.
Okay, so that brings up the question of who gets to decide. You say this in your paper that humans want to better their own lives. We would push AI as far as it is useful to us. Once it starts to hurt us, we will drop it. I hope it's that easy.
Me too.
Who is the we that gets to decide that? Who gets to decide the rules we place upon it, or when we say it's gone beyond its usefulness and we press the red button to stop it?
What's hard about that question is people love money. AI is this cash cow that people feel hasn't been tapped yet. In fact, we're just getting into video generation with AI, and it's now at a point where it's very believable and very photorealistic and all of these different things. And so, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, all of them are being flooded with this kind of content. It's difficult because there will always be money in it. If we ever get to a point where AI can generate entire movies, there's a lot of money there. Especially if it's only one company that's figured it out and releases movies slowly so that humans or everyone else doesn't know. So it's going to be it's hard to say no. But as soon as humans didn't get rid of fire because someone got burned once, so there might be some hurt in the future because of it. But people learned to contain fire once it burned down their whole forest and killed an entire colony or whatever. And so AI will be kind of like that. We will learn to contain it instead of,
Yeah, don't take that fire analogy too far, because fire also tears through a forest and then replenishes it, and it's really healthy. So we'll just we'll ignore that side trail. I think that the human soul that is affected by sin and capitalism as well, just this desire for more, has harmful effects. I'm thinking of a really famous and well-known entrepreneur and visionary in the 1990s. You kind of mentioned him earlier, John Hammond. Are you familiar with that name?
It rings a bell.
Okay.
I couldn't tell you who he is, though.
Yeah, he started a biochemistry, biogenetics firm called InGen.
Okay, I have heard of InGen.
Yeah, and then eventually created an island off the coast, and that's where you get Jurassic Park.
Yes.
Yeah, so life finds a way. Because there's always going to be somebody who takes it too far.
Yes.
How do we know that one time it's taken too far doesn't come back to bite us in an irreparable fashion?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think the best place you can look is the Bible. It talks about God. It talks about how God will protect us, and He will be like that. And we have this really weird advantage that we know how the world ends. And there's not some how, that's talking back to you, that's ending the world, or a Terminator or whatever. So
what if it ends before we get to that point?
What if it ends before we get to Revelation?
No, but what if Revelation happens before we get to the point of AI talking to us in a sentient manner?
That's okay.
I agree. Okay, so I'm going to present to you, this is my last thing. Have you ever heard of Isaac Asimov, the science fiction writer?
Isaac Asimov, I think so, maybe.
Okay, he wrote I, Robot.
Yep, heard of that one.
He was very influential in that sphere, began writing in the 1950s. He came up with the 3 rules of robotics. Have you heard of those before?
I have heard them.
I can give them
be a real brain quiz to bring them back up.
Yeah, I got you. Okay, so I want to say these to you, and I want to see if these sound like decent rules for the governance of AI as we go forward. So the first rule is that a robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human to come to harm. The second is a robot must obey the orders given by human beings, except where those orders would conflict with the first law. The third law is a robot must protect its own existence as long as it doesn't conflict with the first or second laws.
Yes, I have heard those laws before, and I think they're a really good encapsulation of what AI should do. The big issue is AI is very difficult to tell what to do. If you want AI to be intelligent, you want to give it a wide range of data. And this wide range of data gives it all sorts of, different differing perspectives, all of these different things to where after you've trained an AI, it's kind of stock. You can tell it to play a role where you should act like, whenever I need help with homework, I say act like a math professional that has been working at a university for 20 plus years, and that's like a hack to get ChatGPT to behave the way you want it to. But once you start communicating with it long enough, that role fades away. And so, yes, I think those rules are great for AI. The issue is going to be getting it to where the AI believes and will follow those rules no matter what. Because right now, AI is programmed not to tell you how to make a bomb. People can get it to tell you how to make a bomb. Mm-hmm. And so there's all these issues.
Yeah, I'll leave you with this, that Asimov in his writings, as he explored this relationship, had to come up with something he called the zeroth law, or the fourth law, that a robot may not harm humanity, or by inaction allow humanity to come to harm. And so, yeah, I'm curious too, Hudson. Thank you for answering all the questions. Would love to talk about this more with you later.
Yeah.
You didn't answer all the questions, but you answered some of the questions. I mean, you answered all the ones we asked. There's just a lot of questions that need to be asked.
There's a lot of questions that people a lot smarter than me haven't answered.
Yeah, you didn't elaborate on the TikTok girlfriend thing or whatever. That's probably good that you didn't.
That's one of my lowest moments.
All right, so kind of we've got to wrap things up, unfortunately, but one of the things that hasn't been brought up that I think would be important to is, you talked about kind of rebuilding education, which is something that I should probably care about in my role. So I'm curious, as like you walk into this room just like full of books, that I just am trying to think of the last time I ever saw somebody pull one of these books off the shelf and open it and do anything with it besides, like use it to flatten out a poster or something like that. Do you look around in here and you just go, man, this is old and dusty, and this is like this place is trying to protect librarians when the world has so much more to offer than what librarians can offer?
That is a great question, and one that even we've been talking about after and around Senior Orals. We're like, I don't know that I've ever seen anyone read one of these books. You were talking about that. I see in this room, I see a wealth of information. I see, a lot of people putting a lot of hours to creating and compiling this information. And then I look over here into the audience, and I see, mainly on this side, I see a bunch of people who have an attention span that is less than one of these books, maybe one page. Okay? And so I think our phones have kind of ruined us on that point, in that we can't focus up on a book, especially when we don't want to read it. And that's why people turn to things like SparkNotes and, recently ChatGPT for Greybooks curriculum, is because they just don't want to read. They have trouble finding value in reading the book explicitly whenever they could get the same information quicker, faster from the internet. And so I think there's a certain art to reading a book, for sure. But there is also, in order to get people back to a point where they would be willing to go with a book, you have to play to where they are now and phase back into that. So you would have to come up with an education system that is made for a higher or lower attention span, and then you can slowly work them back into a healthy attention span that we used to have as a people. So
I like the sound of that. I don't know how. Maybe you have some ideas how, but you got to start with the dream, I guess. Do you see value in reading books by old dead guys?
Yeah, I mean,
or a net positive, I guess, is maybe what we'll say.
I think I love. I don't read very many books, but every couple months, maybe I'll pick up a book and I'll read it all the way through. And there's just something different about a book. You slow down, you take some time. So I think it is a net positive to read a book. It's just people don't see it that way much anymore, whenever they could be scrolling on Instagram or what have you. So that's my opinion on that.
All right, one last kind of related question. This verse is out of Jeremiah 6. And I think it kind of speaks to what you and I are talking about right now. It says, "Thus says the Lord, stand by the roads and look and ask for the ancient paths where the good way is and walk in it and find rest for your souls." But they said, "We will not walk in it." So what do you think God is saying is to be gained from like looking back at the old things instead of kind of looking forward to what could be?
Whenever you look forward to what could be, what tends to happen is you tend to want change for the sake of change. We need to be different than the past. We need to change, and that's a big part of what's happening nowadays. And so there's value in seeing what already happened in the past, and so that you don't repeat those same mistakes in the future. But I think you should look back in the past for more than just that, because we can't know what was before us except for what was recorded, and that's why we have all of these books. And so I don't know if that answered your question, but
That's great.
That's my answer.
All right. Well, that's your answer. Now it's time for our answer, so you can fire when ready.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh gosh,
No,
I don't know if this is. Do you want to do this?
No.
Okay.
I don't.
We were going to say, is there any other question you would like to have asked? And we were going to involve ChatGPT to come up with another question that we couldn't come up with, but we ran out of time.
Another day.
Yeah. Too many humans.
Too many humans. Yeah. Mr. Perea, the man, the myth, the legend. There is an aspect of you that lives in legend. In fact, it doesn't even exist yet. The people want to know, what is your math tattoo going to be? And when are you going to get it?
Do you want to ask all of them?
Yeah, I'll ask all of them. Okay, and then Mrs. Gladson. Okay. I have two questions for you. One's rhetorical. How does it feel being married to the goat? Okay, and by that I mean greatest ginger of all time. And my second question is, what is the coolest, in your world, what is the coolest use or example you've ever seen with AI? With that. And then Mr. Snell, you seem to be a sci-fi kind of guy. That sort of thing. People might think that's why you named your kids Luke and Layla, but leave that up to you, I guess. I want to know, throughout all of your reading, throughout all of your watching, these stories, what is one AI or robot or seemingly conscious being that you think would be helpful to humans, or that you just want to have?
All right, so for some context, I don't have, I guess, to try to liven up algebra before you got there, I would say things like, when we're working problems on the board, I'd say, that might be my next math tattoo. And they'd be like, next math tattoo? What does that mean? And so the truth is, right now, I don't have any math tattoos, but I just finished a graduate program at Texas A&M a couple years ago in math, and one of the things that got me through is I said, if I ever do finish this, I will get something mathy tattooed on my body. And so, but the problem is, there's just so many good choices, and that's kind of what paralyzes me. I got through all of the cameras. I'm holding a gun to your head. Yeah.
What,
oh man. Okay.
What are you going to choose?
Yeah. So, in my classroom right now, I have a poster with, now I can't remember, but something close to the first 4 million digits of pi, and they're really tiny, as you might imagine. And so, but that would be a really cool thing to have on your back. And so that is a possibility. One of the things that I love that you'll know about me if you talk to me for more than 5 minutes is I love the golden ratio. So I think that's probably the thing that, if forced to choose right now, it would be something involving the golden ratio, which is kind of like God's hidden language that he puts everywhere. In fact, I was kind of trying to talk it up to my geometry class that you were in last year. I just glanced at one of your fellow classmates that was in there, and I was talking it up. Man, I love the golden ratio, guys. And Levi Bailey was like, do you think about your wife as much as you think about the golden ratio? And so, that kind of froze me. Do I? How do I answer that honestly? And I said, she's also in my top 10. I just want you to know. So, So yeah, probably something involving the golden ratio and like the spiral arms of the Milky Way galaxy. That's what I'll say.
Awesome.
Current answer.
I like that.
Which question was rhetorical? Because I have answers.
I mean, go ahead.
Being married to Blake Gladson is one of the greatest joys of my life. I love him so much. But
Everyone say, "Aww."
the coolest application, this one popped into my head immediately because I just talked about it with my friend yesterday. She put in a request for a screw tape letter to be written about her kind of current stage of life, which is my current stage of life, young motherhood. And the output was incredible. It made me cry. And so, yeah, I mean, that's a pretty short answer, but if you ever want to do that, just kind of put in what would the screw tape letter be to, the demon who is haunting the person that struggles with this, and this. And it was very good.
That is really cool. I will have to try that.
Yeah.
What is my favorite robot? Is that the question?
Favorite
essentially?
robot, or one that you want to have, or
right? I'm
have
sure,
access to.
Sure, all the audience members knows all the robots I'm thinking of. I would have to say the ones that intrigue me the most are the ones that come up to that level of consciousness. And then there's are they sentient? Are they not? What is humanity? You talked about the soul a lot, so that's why that piqued my interest. Asimov does a really good job of fleshing that out in his iRobot series. His Foundation series is also very good. And so there's a robot that kind of appears in both of those that I enjoy. But I think maybe one that the audience might be more familiar with is Vision from the Avengers, because he comes to that point where, am I a robot? Am I human? And you get to watch that, that wrestling match in his mind, basically at the very end there. So hopefully there's no spoilers for anybody. But yeah, great job, Hudson. Someday I'll meet you at the restaurant at the end of the galaxy, and we can talk about this more.
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to pray for us and we'll be done. God, we just thank you so much for this time with Hudson. We thank you for the intellect that you've gifted him with, his ability to present that, but most of all, we just thank you for his soul. And we thank you for the young man that you are crafting him into, that will go out into this world and just do great things for you. We love you so much. In Jesus' name, amen.